Hey everybody, I'm Matt Deutschman from Doubletake Promotional Marketing, and wanted to have an interesting conversation today to share with you all. If you know me, and if whoever's listening or watching this, if we've had a conversation over the last year or so, you've probably asked me something along the lines of like, "Hey, how's the supply chain crisis affecting your business?" That's probably the number one question I get these days from people that I talk to. That question has supplanted the old top question I would get: what's the hottest new product that you see in the market these days? But so I thought it would be useful to have a conversation today with my friend BJ Boldog, who is with his family runs three businesses in the freight, logistics, and warehousing industry. So BJ's got really vast expertise and experience, and a little bit more inside experience than I do, or than most people I know, into what's going on with the supply chain and the trucking industry in the country right now. So just thought this would be a really interesting conversation to kind of bring to light. So BJ, first of all, thank you for joining me. Welcome.
Absolutely. It's on the topic on everyone's mind, not just here, even my wife, when she goes to the stores, what's going on.
Yeah. It's fun to finally be in the limelight, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So can you, well, first of all, you want to just give a little overview of your experience, what your companies do, to kind of paint a picture of how immersed you are in all this, and then give us an overview of what we're looking at right now with some of the challenges in the industry.
Sure. I've been in the industry since 1988. Started on the 3PL side, third-party logistics, brokerage side. Also ran a truck line and warehousing. So the three entities we currently have, are three different divisions, are the third-party logistics side, a truck line which currently operates like 30 some trucks that go across country, and then two warehouses with the main presence in the Chicago area, the Dallas area, and looking to expand into I think Phoenix and Atlanta are the two areas we're kind of looking into to look to expand in there. My whole career basically has been through this industry, in the logistics industry, and I've been doing this, like I said, since '88. Matter of fact, I graduated college. When I got out of college, I thought I was going to be a chemistry teacher and basketball coach. And basketball coach I kind of do on the side, but yeah, the chemistry thing didn't work out well. I took a little bit off to help my dad and his company at the time, and that was 30 some years later. So we always tease them, once logistics gets in your blood, there's nothing like it. I kind of explained, someone asked me just the other day, to explain stuff. I said, well, basically, let's put it this way. I'm like a firefighter. You just kind of jump from fire to fire right now. But if you think about our industry, people don't think about the logistics until it affects your pocketbook, until you see shortages. Now, all of a sudden, everyone starts thinking about logistics. But as I explained to my kids, I said, look around your house, look around your room, look around this room. Everything that you touch, see, eat, anything has been shipped at one point from somewhere to somewhere. So our industry it's never going to go away. And unfortunately, our industry really can drive the economy. So the rates and the stuff and the shortages that we see in our industry will actually put strain on the economic growth, or the prices that you pay for a pencil, or the chicken. My wife was just at the grocery store and was giving me a hassle just last week, saying, you know how much chicken has gone up since then? Yes, dear, I understand that. That's not the only thing that will go up, and that's just because of shortages that we're currently dealing with, and the pressures that we're seeing in our industry. Like I said, I've been doing this since '88, and I will say this is unprecedented. This is something that I've never seen before. In my vast experience, for something this long, and something we're not, a lot of people will talk, well, it goes up, it's going to come back. I heard another couple other experts, and we were on another webinar, talking. You said we're not, we're on an edge of a cliff right now. I mean, the logistics really is, you put too much more pressure on it, and we could have some real ugly scenarios in the logistics world. That being said, I don't want, I'm going to try not to, scare people, but we can go one or two ways. So, I mean, I think we're coming back away from the cliff a little bit, which is a good thing. I think it was a lot more so towards that cliff a few months ago, but we are making strides to normalize, kind of come back a little bit. So that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Let's get into some of the specifics. I think that something that was I had a little bit of insight into, but it was certainly more eye-opening for me, and I think eye-opening for a lot of people over the last several months, as we all, as a country, as a society, have learned more about the supply chain and learned more about where everything that we have, when you look around the room, where everything comes from, how we get it, right? We all had some like vague understanding of the supply chain, but I think to truly understand how different factors impact shortages of goods or prices or shipping costs. It's been really fascinating for me, and I think for a lot of other people. Something that, that really was interesting to me is understanding when, there's an entire chapter of this that we can write about what happens overseas, multiple chapters, when things are manufactured, right? And then by the time they arrive here, right? We've all seen by now the photos, the aerial photos of the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach with the hundreds of container ships lined up in port trying to get their goods unloaded, right? Once those goods are unloaded in that port, they still need to be moved around the port, strategic different locations for where they're going next. Then the containers need to be put on rails to get to inland depots. Then the goods need to be unloaded, put on either further, going further across the country via rail, or from there they're put on trucks. And then there are truck depots throughout the country. And then there are individual locations like yours where trucks come in, goods are unloaded, goods are put on different trucks and then delivered and dispersed throughout the country. And at all of these pivotal locations, we've been seeing labor shortages. We've been seeing, various shutdowns for COVID and different distancing measures. And all of these things impact the speed at which merchandise can be moved across the country. And I think, a lot of that was, we saw how shaky the whole system is, that it's, one domino gets put out of place and the whole system has to adjust. So can you shed some light on all of that? Just like all the different stages between when something arrives at port and it actually winds up on the shelf at the store.
Sure, all the moving parts. Yeah, you don't think about it. So very rarely. So when stuff comes in on the port and then they have to move it around, a lot of times they'll have the warehouses where they'll kind of put it around and put it on different things. But and then from there, it's going to go to a warehouse. It never goes from the rail, and people don't think about from a ship to the rail to the store. That doesn't happen. It always goes from the ship, obviously, to the yards. Then the yards. Then what happens is they've got to get drivers to come in, take those containers, deliver them to a warehouse, or deliver them to the rail. So the ports don't have their own transportation company. They rely on the outside people. So then now you're relying on someone else's drivers to come and trying to give appointments to when can you pick it up, when does it hit, because drivers typically what they would say was they don't want to wait at the rail yard. You go to the yard, sometimes you could wait 4 or 5 hours. And drivers don't get paid for that. They get paid by the run a lot of times in these scenarios. So the drivers aren't going to even book anything until they know that the container is down on a chassis ready to go. And then once that happens, now you've got a backlog. Well, I can't pick it up today. I'll get it tomorrow. And then, okay, well, what warehouse is it going to? Is it going to the rails? Is it going here? So you have those kind of logistics that you're dealing with. One of the biggest things and I was just talking to a leasing company, and what people don't understand, I was explaining to my wife one time we were traveling, is I'm like, hey, look at that, it's a container. We've all seen the containers, right? They don't have wheels on them. You need a chassis. So they need to pick up with a crane and drop it onto a chassis, attach it to a chassis, then a truck can transport it. Well, there was a big leasing company that normally has 12,000 chassis that they lease every day. Their current pool is only 30.
Why is
So
that?
even because people that know that they have stuff on the water are holding on to them, paying extra, leasing just to hold on to their chassis, or not returning them back to the
Wow.
company after it's done, because they're like, hey, if I got 3 chassis here, but I know I've got a container coming in 4 days, I'll pay the extra charges to hold on to it for 4 days. I'm not going to give them back because I may not get those chassis back.
Wow.
So once these containers come in, now we've got to put them on a chassis. And if there's no chassis available, they just sit there, which then backs up the port because they can't unload everything until the containers are gone. That's just step one, right? So that's just
right. That's step one. And that's a chassis. That's a word that until about 12 months ago, I thought was chassis, but so
right.
I've
Yes.
learned a lot, and I think so I'm saying that so that anyone who's watching this thinks to themselves, oh, that's what that is,
Right.
So,
yeah, and I you can see it if you're driving down the highway, you'll see like a big container and they're like an orange thing underneath those containers. That's the chassis. So if you're ever driving, you'll see one on there. So there's a shortages of those. So now let's say we get them all in there. Well, okay, now you've got to get them to a warehouse. The problem that we're having now is warehouse workers. We can't find workers. I just heard there were 4 million people that left the labor pool. So warehouses now, where they may have been open 24 hours, or they may have been open, from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m., are now only open 7 to 3, and there is no overtime hours. And as opposed to having 30 doors where they have loads coming in and all the time, maybe they're only using 5. Because they don't have enough employee or staff to unload all of the trucks that are coming in. So they've shortened the amount of time they could do, which then puts them into finding another facility to unload. So now we're looking for drivers. Once we find a driver, well, where's that going to? To the warehousing. And I'll give you an example. We in our Texas facility, we were looking to replace some warehouse workers. We were using some temporary ones, and with the temporary staff, they were obviously in and out. We put out, and this was, it's gotten a little bit better. Last year we put out an ad, and we had probably 80 people respond to it, said, yeah, I'll be there. 5 people showed up for an interview of the 80 who said they were coming. I know other warehouses and other companies are even offering, when I was down in Texas, I was having a conversation with someone else. They were offering a $5,000 signing bonus, and nobody still wanted it.
wow.
Nobody would still come in.
And why is that? What is it? Because there's just so much competition for labor that their $5,000 signing bonus was not even enough, or is there a different reason why people are not re-entering the workforce or entering the workforce?
That gets into a whole policy and economic issue.
Okay.
I think part of it is that we haven't encouraged people to go back to work. I think we're encouraging, the fear of obviously getting COVID, right? Being masked up. Do I want to go out? I have people, you're not traveling, you're not doing this. Oh no, you're not, so there's that fear still running around as part of it. I think number 2, people, we were working and pushing and all of that, then got paid to stay home and realized, well, it's not bad staying home. I can make close to what I had. I would be okay with it. Or you have the other people that says, well, I'll just do with less, and realize that doing with less isn't necessarily a bad thing. So they don't want to, they're just sitting at home saying, well, why should I work if I don't have to right now? So I think there's multiple things. I think it's starting to turn. Because we did hire a couple more people just recently, last week down in Texas. I was down there, and we had people actually coming in for the interview, decent workers. The issue is you had to raise salaries, and I think that was part of it, was that the salaries that you were looking for a warehouse worker is $15 to $17 an hour. So the people are like, well, I'm not gonna work for that anymore. They used to work for that for money. They're not doing that anymore. They're saying, I want more money. So we had to actually up our cost to do that. When we did that, then we had some people that we got in and we hired. So we've actually had to pay more for labor. And if you do that, there is some there. It's just not, what it used to be. So anyways, but once they get that to a warehouse, obviously warehouses are having problems getting trucks and all of that. Now you've got that. Now, the other thing that people don't realize is even though you get the freight, you have to put it on a pallet. The problem is the pallet now has tripled because that's wood. Think about your house and the wood shortage. Now you can't find skids hardly anymore. If somebody has skids, they're holding on to skids. Our warehouses have skids that are like, I don't give those away yet because as stuff comes in, then you have to break it down, devan it, put it on a skid if you can find the skids, and you're paying a lot more for skids now, and then send it out to the facilities. Now you're at the point of once it gets the van, it gets into a warehouse. Now you're making appointments. Now with COVID and everything else, everybody wants delivery appointments. Everyone used to be, hey, we're open, 8 to 5, first come, first serve, come on in. Not anymore. Everyone wants pickup appointments, delivery appointments. I have a customer, perfect example. I got the pickup appointments, call him down, say, all right, we're going to, we're picking this up tomorrow. He's going to be there, Thursday at 8 a.m. Oh, I can't take this for 2 weeks. So now we've got to go back to that guy and say, well, I can't pick this up because now they don't want it for 2 weeks. And now you're looking for either holding it or where they go. So there's delays in that process also.
Well, and that actually, that puts a strain on the manufacturing end as well. Cause I have a client who was telling me about a story that one of his clients is a food manufacturing company. And they had that exact issue where actually trucks used to, they used to show up at their facility to pick up their goods and they may have to wait a little while. Now the truck drivers are saying, to your point earlier, like, I'm not going to sit here and wait for your load. So if they show up and the load's not ready, the truck driver leaves. Well, that causes the manufacturing facility, they're running out of space to store their stuff coming off the production lines because they can't get the truck drivers to come back because they don't want to potentially wait for the load to be ready. So I think, that one example, that's got to ripple, that's got to be a common example also where there's, just if the truck drivers are going to have to wait for a load, they're going to refuse to go to that location or be less likely to go on a specific appointment time. And, it puts a strain on both ends.
That's a huge thing. And one of the biggest things that was changed was this, and people are like, no big deal, ELDs, you need electronic logs. No, you don't understand. I understand that a lot of drivers had their logbooks. Yes, there were people that cheat the system. You're always going to have that. I understand that. But the electronic logs, and they'll say, we're going to make it safer. You're only going to be able to drive your 11 hours. Well, before, you used to be able to, if you're sitting at a place getting unloaded, this is why the wait times didn't matter to a driver. He would write off duty or in his cab, and it wouldn't affect his drive time. Mm-hmm. Now that doesn't happen. Once that engine starts, that drive time is 11 hours, whether you're sitting in traffic, whether you're sitting at a dock. That's less money that he can make. So if you're paying him by the mile, he's making less miles by sitting. If those wheels aren't turning, drivers aren't making money. So anytime a facility is holding them up and they understand that, if there's a delay here, this is why a lot of people won't go there unless you pay me double what you would normally pay, because you're gonna have to sit. I'm going to have to sit and lose money on the amount of miles I can drive.
So in a sense, manufacturers, or I imagine even warehouses where truck drivers will be going to pick up merchandise, they could be putting themselves in a better position to kind of fight through all these challenges if they, number one, have loads ready to go when their trucks are arriving. But also what I've heard is helping the drivers load into the truck and just being more accommodating and kind of treating them with like white glove service a little better, and not just, not just kind of leaving it all for the driver to take care of it. That's kind of what I've heard also, just the overall treatment of the drivers when they arrive on site. If that can improve, that can put a location in better position to get more accommodation from a driver.
Oh, absolutely. The drivers have always been, I think drivers have always been like the second class citizens. They think, oh, it's just a driver, just over. And what this has put the spotlight on them is, listen, you need drivers. You have to be kind to drivers and understand this. And so I explain it this way. people, and we have the same situation. We have our drivers here that we talk to all the time. We have warehouses, and I talk to those guys about talking and how to treat drivers. I said, let me put it to you this way. The only way drivers really make money is of the 52 weeks a year, they're on the road 50 weeks. Imagine being away from your family, being away from your home 5 to 6 days a week, maybe every other week you're home. And when you're home, you're only home for 2 days and then you're back on the road again. So you don't have that time. If the driver's going and he has a family issue, he's trying to deal with it on the phone while he's driving. He's got, people cutting him off all the time. He's got traffic jams, traffic issues. I mean, I hate sitting in traffic. So you can imagine that is your life. You're sitting in traffic. Now you get to a place and now all of a sudden the facility won't let you use the restroom. Rest areas now are closed, so drivers just can't stop there. The parking lots are full at truck stops, so now they can't park there. Cops are, the DOT is chasing them off the side of the road and, exit ramps. And so there's really hardly anywhere for them to stop, much less go to the washroom. I know, like for us, when this COVID hit, we put out porta potties in our warehouses for drivers to use at any given time, just because people don't think about that. So, if you think about when you're trying to do your job and someone comes in and they're a little frustrated, a little, on edge, you have to think, okay, well, what's behind this? Yeah. And a lot of times it's because either he's having an issue there or the way he's been treated, or, maybe his boss just got done yelling for being late and it wasn't even really his fault. Hey, the traffic, I don't care what it is, you got to get there or it cost me $250 fine. And so the drivers get kind of squeezed on both sides. So my suggestion too is if you're having deliveries, the nicer you can be and the more accommodating you can be to a driver, the better off it'll be for you. And though most drivers are willing to help and they want to do what it is, to get the job done too. They understand that, the issues that are currently rising and going on. So
sure. Well, it's something that you mentioned there that I think contributes also to another part of this supply chain challenge. You talked about how, drivers to make serious money as a driver, you're on the road 50 weeks out of the year. You're not with your family often. It's not the, I'm like you, I don't like sitting in traffic. So if you imagine that's your day to day, it's hard work and it's not, the most enjoyable lifestyle always. We're looking at a pretty significant driver shortage right now, right? Do you see some of that like lifestyle of a driver contributing to that? And is it difficult to attract new drivers to the profession? How's that all kind of unfolding these days?
Yeah, the last thing that I just heard was a shortage of just under 100,000 driver shortage. And I hate to say this isn't really new, although it's gotten worse. This isn't really new in our industry. And part of it is the perception of a driver. Oh, he's just a truck driver. So you're not perceived as an essential worker, which people are finding out now with COVID. You are an essential worker.
Absolutely.
When you go to the store. So it's the stigma behind it. But part of it too is the pay. The pay was, been suppressed for so long for truck drivers, and people didn't really think about it. As opposed to a manufacturer, when what the first thing they want to do is, well, we need to be cheaper than everybody else. Well, how am I going to do that? Well, you know what? We'll just say we're not going to pay a guy $1,000 to do this run. We're going to pay him $800, and that's where we'll save our margins. So the first thing that they looked at to cut margins to be competitive is drivers. So we'll just pay them less, or we'll find another company that will take it and haul it for cheaper. So you run into a lot of that. So that which kept the driver payroll artificially down. But right now, what also has happened is obviously since COVID and some of the pay that drivers got to go, basically stay away. I think a lot of drivers from what I heard too, that were older drivers in the industry either retired early and said, I'm done with this, or they said, you know what, I'll take a little less to stay home and be with my family. Sure. Now to get back now, that's fine. I'll get back in that truck, but I want another 20, 30,000 a year. If not, that's fine. Then I'll I'll suffer with a little bit less for more quality family time. So that's depleting the market also. And I think one of the things that we're kind of watching is the rule that they want to get younger drivers, which I am totally for. 18 might be a little young. I know that that's one thing that is being floated around right now in our industry. Just remember me as 18. I don't know if I'd want to be driving an 80,000 pound rig down the street with, right. But I heard one of the things they were talking about is having 18s just do some local and regional work and not over, which I can agree with. And that's, I think, the other reason they're kind of really pushing, the big thing is, driverless trucks. You hear that all the time. We're still a ways from that, but I think that, that has some real traction now when they see the driver shortage that currently is in place. To keep good drivers now, I was just talking to our safety director and our driver manager, and he was like, listen, he said, here's the issue, company drivers, you can get company drivers, but they want more money, obviously. So yeah, I'll come back, but here's what I want to come back for. The other issue is getting trucks. You can't get a truck, just like a car. How many cars? You look at the truck lot. We drove by a truck lot and we're like, hey, I want that tractor right there. And they're just like, oh no, those are already spoken for. The next time delivery is 6 months out. I was like, oh man. So now you can't find a tractor and people are holding onto their tractors. And now the maintenance costs have gone up, and then the parts to replace for your tractor have doubled. So now you're trying to fight getting a tractor, getting the guy in there. Owner operators, like we were talking about, some of the owner operators out there, which own their own authority and kind of jump from company to company. They think this is like back in the day of the old 49ers back out in California where it's gold days. They think they found gold. Here's what I want. And if you don't, somebody else will pay it. So you see a lot of that jumping around, hopping and skipping right now. And then like I said, as maintenance have rise, fuel price, I just heard was they're speculating about $100 a barrel by spring, which if that happens, fuel surcharges are going to go through the roof because we haven't hit that in a long time. Between the maintenance, the fuel, and everything else, a lot of drivers are actually just parking their truck and saying, you know what, I'm done. I'll come back in a couple of years. But
you're going to try to jump on that. You're going to say, I'll take the truck while you're sitting on the sidelines.
That's exactly right. We have one driver that did that. I said, listen, I'll pay you for it. Oh yeah, no, we do everything we can. And I think the other thing too, are companies are realizing now, which we've always said, here we always treat our drivers with respect. One of our core values is respect for people and respect for God. So one of the things that we want to endear to people is to really respect people. I don't care if you're cleaning my toilets. I don't care if you're driving a truck. I don't care if you're a part-time coming in and do order entry. You need to treat that individual with respect. I think if you do that, and I think what companies now are realizing with better drivers, when you treat them with respect, they'll stay. They'll be willing to say, all right, let's do this together. We're in this together. I see that, that you've got that and we'll stay. And I think it's a good thing. Yeah. It's a bad thing. Obviously it's affecting the cost of everything that you do and that you buy, but it's a good thing that is probably long overdue and needed for our aspect, for our employees, for the drivers.
Well, I think that's a lesson that has, I think, been brought to the forefront across industries over the last couple of years. You have the Great Resignation going on, and I think employers in general are growing in empathy and respect for their teams, and the companies that have long held to those beliefs and values are better able to weather the storm during this last couple of years. A couple other things that I just want to ask you about, and then I want to. You did say that we're in a better position than we were a few months ago. So I want to end by asking you, all right, so where's the silver lining? And not to put you on the record of speculation. Sure. I want to. So before I ask you that though, national drug testing system. How do you see that impacting the industry? I know that may also be related to the age reduction to 18 and with drivers entering the workforce. And then also this labor law, AB5, in our kind of offline conversation, you said that that's something that you're looking at, but it's in the works in California, and you're going to see what's going to how it's going to impact the rest of the country. But just quick explanation of that what that is putting into question is how drivers are classified, whether they're classified as independent contractors or employees. If you're an independent contractor, in theory, someone can't tell you what load to pick up, when to pick it up, where to bring it, because then you're giving orders, and that's something you can only do to an employee. So that's just a little bit of a tricky, kind of semantic situation with how drivers are classified. So could you just touch on those couple things real quick?
Sure. The 85, obviously everything happens in California where the 85, the law is kind of out there. That is something we definitely keep our eye on. We've dealt with something similar that in Illinois and some of these other places through insurances, and they wanted you to be a company driver, which then the company is on the bill. I mean, so that really raises the company's costs for me, insurance and everything else. Typically an owner operator pays for their own cab, pays for their own maintenance, and then they'll take our trailer. So really all of the costs, the operating cost is strictly on them. They pay for their own fuel. They manage their own company. So if they're not an owner and they're on me, well, that means my insurance cost is going to go up, my maintenance costs are going to go up, my fuel cost is going to go up. I'm going to have to pay this individual a little bit more, which then in turns to my rates are a little bit more. What happened is I heard a couple of the bigger companies, a lot of the drivers now. So what a bigger, we don't currently do this, but I know some of the other bigger truck lines, they'll have lease to own. So a driver can sign on and say, well, you're an owner operator, just get your own authority. We'll put you in a cab and we'll lease you this cab. So then once you make your payments through your normal runs, we'll deduct X amount of money out of your paycheck. Once it's paid off, then that cab is yours. You can go anywhere you want. But until then, that's my cab. Well, this law is bringing that into effect, saying, no, you can't do that. This is, if you're going to sell it to them, now they can own it. So a lot of the drivers I hear are actually now being repositioned to be out of Arizona or Nevada, not in California. It's an interesting thought. And I'll give you kind of an example where they want, if you're an owner operator, they want you to be your own company, your own entity. Back probably about 10 years ago, for example, when I first started in the industry as a broker or 3PL, we used to give driver directions. Right? Hey, all right, go down here, take a left, go 3 stops, and you're right there. Well, what started happening was if he got in an accident, I dispatched him, I'm liable for that. So for an example, C.H. Robinson got sued for $25 million because a driver killed somebody because they told them go take the northern route out of California, don't take the southern route. Well, the driver happened to kill someone and they said, okay, well, you owe $25 million because of this. So it's a whole thing because they dispatch the driver. So I know for us, we don't do that. We always say, here's one way you can go. However, GPS now, you figure it out type of deal. Yeah. We'll give the number. But I think they're putting a lot of pressure on that. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. If it does, you might lose some drivers in that respect. That would just say, yeah, I don't want to be that. The good thing on the owner operator side, if you think about it, to be an owner operator, you're basically your own boss. You can kind of go and come as you please. You can, for us, you have to take our loads. We have a bunch of owner operators. Like I said, of our 30 trucks, we probably have 15 owner operators. The tricky part with dispatching an owner operator for us even now is saying, okay, where do you want to go? You want to go to Kansas City? You want to go to Texas? I have these available. Are you willing to? So you're almost still trying to, encourage them to take another load if they don't want to, or they have a few, like we have one driver that down in Texas says, well, I'm taking a month off, just parked his tractor and said, all right, I'll see you next month. Well, there's really, he's not an employee, so right. What are you going to do? He has his own cab, but I think that's the freedom a lot of drivers is we all do. Obviously, I have my own company, so I have worked for other companies, and like I said back in the day, as Conway was now XPO, and well, that was great experience. I kind of like being my own boss at times. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays. We'll keep our eye on that. I think that's something that on the horizon that everyone in the trucking industry is watching closely in that.
Gotcha. Silver linings. Why are we in a better position now than we were a few months ago? And without holding you to anything, do you think that
Sure.
it's going to continue to improve?
I think that there are a couple of things that could really set us back. One of them is being this mandate in Canada right now is a huge deal with these drivers being forced to get vaccinated, or you can't deliver across border. And they're just, obviously really dealing with it. And that takes out about 66,000 drivers in Canada of bringing goods back into the United States. It doesn't affect necessarily the American drivers yet. I say yet, because as long as we deliver there and come back, we don't load there, but we can come right back. We're fine. You can't pick up a load in Canada and start going. Well, if they decide to say, okay, well, all drivers have to be vaxxed, you're going to lose a whole pool of drivers that just don't want that option.
Now, I saw that in Canada, what's going on, and you had the drive across the country last week. Starting in Western Canada and kind of picked up steam until it reached Ontario. And what I was reading is that the trucking industry association in Canada estimates that 80 to 90% of their truck drivers are vaccinated.
Right.
So I think it's probably only like more. What I was reading is more like 16 to 20,000 drivers that are unvaccinated, but there's a lot of solidarity of other drivers who support their colleagues. And then the issue is also that they're being forced to quarantine upon crossing back over the border, which is just going to put further strain on the timing of all of these deliveries and backlog and everything that we've already discussed, over the last 20 minutes.
If they require the United States people to do that, obviously it's a lot less in the United States as far as vaccinated drivers than Canada. And that's where you're going to run into all kinds of issues. So that is something to kind of keep your eye on. The other thing is, and it's funny you say that, is I just heard that they're actually in America here, they're planning a drive across America starting in California to DC with the truck driver. So we'll see how that goes. That's supposed to be March from what I hear, but I've heard that before. So we'll see how that goes. So that I think the silver lining is we've hit the COVID thing. We know the essential workers. Everyone has seen a 30% increase in all of their pricing, and it was like, oh my gosh. So this has kind of been priced into. What we're seeing now is what I'm keeping my eye on is the economy and inflation. Right now, everyone across the board, manufacturing, retails, if you look at the retail numbers, retail sales were up over 20% last year, which is amazing. It's probably been 20 years since that's been that high, which is great. Retail sale and all of this, the shipping stuff gets done. So there are some good things. But what we're seeing is a slowdown a little bit. So I think if the inflation hits like they're saying, a slower economy is going to grow. There'll be less demand for goods, which then will lower the cost and probably bring numbers back where there'll be enough drivers to start delivering some of the stuff. So
it doesn't sound like a full silver lining if it's if it's contingent on the economy suffering, but it sounds like it's more of like a correction than anything else. Is it really realistic that retail sales skyrocketed 20% year over year? There's going to be a correction, but then hopefully with that comes a price correction on the supply chain in general. Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's right. It's more of the correction. We're not going to. Retail sales won't be 20% this year. That I can tell you. But the fact that there is going to be slower growth, slower growth, and I think there'll be that price correction. And I think it'll kind of correct and start to normalize the industry a little bit, as we say. But there's always pressures. The other thing that can really derail too is to keep your eye on the regulatory things that they could come out. Okay, all right, all truck drivers have to be vaxxed, or we changed the hours of service and we're going to do this. Stuff like that would really throw a wrench back into and then pull it all back. or if the country goes into a shutdown again. Maybe they say, all right, we're going to shut everything down. We're doing this, and stuff like that. I think we're tiptoeing around the edges on that. I think that we're in the point now where we're kind of, trying to figure out I hate to say the word new normal.
I knew you were gonna...
I hate that. I hate that term. But I should say new normal, but just how to do things differently.
Sure.
So I think, for me being an entrepreneur, I think there's some real chances for people to, if they want to get involved in the industry, just have some ideas. Those are good things to have right now. And I think the opportunity for us, I think you'll see a lot more people actually in the next year when they start to see the prices, how it kind of settles down. You'll see a lot more actually new companies come into the trucking field that are going to start their own companies, whether it's 1 truck, 2 truck, 5 truck type of deal, which will then also help relieve some of the capacity constraints too. So that's always a possibility. But it's something to keep the eye on in the next few months. So,
gotcha. Well, really appreciate the conversation today, BJ. Thank you for taking the time to shed your expertise and your experience. That was really informative. It's fun. I enjoy talking about it, even though it's not always a positive conversation. It's interesting and really insightful. So appreciate your time, everybody. BJ Boldog, R&K Freight, R&K Logistics, Direct Warehousing. Hopefully you learned something and you found this as interesting as I did. Thank you, BJ.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Thanks, Matt.